Hi, I'm Phil O'Connor, the Live Enterprise Director here at the Oklahoman. Welcome to Week in Review, where we catch up on some of the stories from the week past and look ahead to some of the stories we have coming this weekend. Hey, let's start with the folks that are here with me today. We've got Ben Felder from the Watchdog Desk. We've got Catherine McNutt, our higher education reporter, and of course Don Mecoy, our business editor, is here with me as well. So let's start with some breaking news this morning. We've got a new superintendent for the Oklahoma City Public Schools.
Yeah, the Oklahoma City Public School Board met this morning and voted unanimously to make Aurora Lora, who had been acting as the interim superintendent, to make her the permanent superintendent. So in April, Rob New, who had been here since 2014, the board had voted to cut ties with him. Aurora Lora, who had been the associate superintendent, took over on an interim basis, and that was made permanent today.
And she's walking into a district that's got a lot of issues.
Yeah, a lot of challenges. You know, a lot of challenges that existed 2 years ago when we hired our last superintendent. But when I was talking to her this morning, and it seems like a lot of those challenges have increased a lot. $30 million in budget cuts over the last year due to state and federal funding decreases. You know, large urban school systems like Oklahoma City's, this is the largest in the state, deal with their own unique challenges, high poverty rates, growing minority population. The district's been embattled by high discipline rates that they've tried to tackle. So a lot of challenges. It's not an easy job. We've seen that. The turnover has been pretty high. Aurora Lora becomes our 11th superintendent since the year 2000.
And even she starts off on a bit of a misstep initially with the lack of a certification that she has since gotten.
Yeah, there was
some miscommunication, if nothing else.
Yeah,
right?
there was a certification that she needed to have as superintendent, and talked that she probably should have had it as associate superintendent. But yeah, it doesn't seem like there was anything egregious going on. It was kind of a miscommunication issue. But yeah, all that's taken care of, and so yeah, she's got her certificate this last month. She's also bought a house in the district, which has been talked a lot about. Rob New, the former superintendent, a lot of questions were raised about him not moving his family from Seattle to Oklahoma City and how much time he was spending in the district. And Aurora seems to really be trying to hammer home that this is her community, and she's been working here for 2 years. In fact, the school district interviewed her back in 2014 when they ultimately selected Rob, and I asked her about coming to Oklahoma City, you know, despite not getting the superintendent position, and she just said this was a district that she was excited to work in. She's been pretty open about the fact that she wanted to become superintendent. Even when Rob was here, the kind of the rumor around the district was that at some point she probably would become the superintendent, and when Rob left, the board never really made it clear that they were casting a wide search. So it wasn't too much of a surprise that they made it permanent today, but they did.
Right. Education, a big issue this week too. Tuesday night in the elections, we had a lot of people that were running for office. Part of the Teachers Caucus.
Yeah, the Teachers.
Talk a little bit about that.
Teachers Caucus or Education Caucus, kind of an unofficial term for dozens of public education candidates. Some of these are current or former teachers. A lot just have connections to school districts, whether they are administrators or are just volunteers, are running on this platform of wanting to increase teacher salaries and increase education funding, which has been cut in recent years. So Tuesday night's primary, we were watching a lot of these legislative races. The focus was kind of on the 28 incumbents that were seeking re-election. We saw a record number of incumbents that were facing challengers, so 28 were seeking challenges within their party. Many of them were running against some of these education candidates. You know, I was kind of thinking about it. The storyline that night was that most of these incumbents were successful. 25 of the 28 won their primaries. You know, only 3 falling doesn't sound like a big deal, except when you consider the fact that only 1 of the last 30 incumbents to face a challenger has lost, and in fact only 3 Republican incumbents have lost over the last 16 years. So 3 is kind of a massive number when you consider that, and 2 of those races were education candidates that took down the incumbent. Overall, about 40 educators that have kind of been under this umbrella won primaries, and so most of those were in primaries for open seats. Maybe they were Democratic primaries in a Republican strong district or vice versa. But the storyline coming out is that there was some success, but the education candidates are still going to be around in November. It's definitely going to be a storyline when we get to the general election for House and Senate seats.
Great. Ben was around all night on election night, live coverage from the studio all night long with insight from a lot of great analysts that were providing unprecedented and I think just the deepest coverage you can get on the elections here in Oklahoma. We'll be back in the coming elections providing that same kind of coverage. We hope you'll come back and check for us on newsok.com. Sticking with the election, or with the education theme, Catherine, you were at the State Board of Regents yesterday.
Yes.
Tuition hikes on the agenda.
Tuition is going up at every public college and university in Oklahoma. That wasn't surprising. When the state budget was finalized, higher education took a nearly 16% cut from the previous year, so everyone knew that funding was going to have to come from somewhere. These tuition hikes don't make up that full amount. I think at the most at any college, maybe 50%. College presidents just said they simply would price people out of enrolling if they did that. But the funding sources for public colleges in Oklahoma come from the state appropriations and tuition, basically. Now, bigger schools, OU and OSU, do get a lot of private donations, obviously. But in every case, almost every case, that is for something very specific. I want you to build an engineering building. I want you to set up a scholarship for teachers. You know, it's not something they can take those donations and pay the light bill with. So the funding to run the university, pay faculty, all of that comes from the state appropriations and from the tuition. And so when it got cut that much, it's no surprise that tuition went up.
And you say the tuition increases won't meet the need alone. So are we seeing then cuts like as well going on?
Lots of, they had, you know, you remember with the revenue failures, the funding for the fiscal year that just ended kept being cut back and back. So all through this year, they've already been anticipating that and feeling that and knowing that the new year, so a lot of cuts have already been made, and all the schools are leaving vacant positions open. And then just depending on, you know, how small they are and what their resources are, there have been layoffs, there have been cuts in programs, athletic programs at smaller schools that were there are gone, just on, and they're pretty concerned and frustrated. They felt like they got an unfair amount of the cut in the budget year, that they knew it would be a cut, that everyone would suffer a little bit, but the higher education officials feel like they were unfairly cut. And they're concerned going forward because they're not sure next year will be a lot better.
Has the State Board of Regents taken any position on the penny tax?
They have not.
Increase request?
They have not.
Is that anticipated at all, or do we
I don't know.
Whether they will, or?
I don't anticipate the regents as a whole taking. You know, they would have preferred, I think, you know, for the legislature to fund education better, but there is a good chunk of money in there if that passes for higher ed. It wouldn't make any difference this fiscal year that starts now. It would take, you know, because the vote's not even until November, so it wouldn't help them next year. Do
the Board of Regents typically work unanimously in these kinds of things? Is it a unanimous decision, or was there a lot of discussion before they approved this?
No, the board is usually unanimous on this kind of things. The way this works is each one of these colleges come up with their budget, their request. Most of them have a governing board, a board of regents of their own that first approve it. So by the time it comes to the state regents, it's been discussed and looked at and has everyone's pretty much agreement. This is the course we're going to take. There are state limits, and none of them met that. They look at their peer universities in the region, and they're not allowed to raise tuition just to whatever. It has to stay within some boundaries, and they all do. Just to give parents or students who are paying for college next year a rough idea, because it varies from school to school, but say your average increase for the year next year at a two-year school, it'll be a little over $300, up to, like, I think it's $550, $60 at OU and OSU. So that's what out of your pocket for a full-time undergraduate student next year.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Catherine. So a little brawling going on in a boardroom, at least over in Tulsa, I guess. The Williams Company and a little dispute with the CEO.
Right, and that's kind of the end of a long story that started about a year ago, where you had a Texas energy magnate who runs a company called Energy Transfer, which he has built into a powerhouse through a series of shrewd acquisitions. About a year ago, he targeted Williams Companies, which is based in Tulsa, which owns the crown jewel of pipelines in the United States. It delivers much of the natural gas to the Northeast, which lives on natural gas, particularly in the winter, and that's how Williams has become a pipeline powerhouse. And so he decided he wanted to buy Williams, and he's done a lot of acquisitions over the years. About a year ago, he offered Williams, I think, $48 a share, which was more than Williams stock was selling for at the time, and Williams turned him down. He came back as energy prices continued to fall. He came back, I think the second offer was like $33 a share, and Williams said, yeah, we'll do that, because things were looking bad and it looked like a good deal. But the deal just continued to look worse and worse for both sides. And it became interesting because it was clear that neither company really wanted to do this deal as energy prices continued to crater. They bottomed out like in February. But publicly, both companies continued to support the deal. The Williams board approved it, suggested to their shareholders that they approve it, which they did just last week, because there's these huge penalties if you back out of a merger. This would have created the 5th largest energy company in the world.
Even if the market changes, the conditions change?
They signed off on it. And when you sign off on these deals, you agree to penalties. For Williams, to back out of the deal would have cost them billions of dollars. Okay, there's huge penalties involved on both sides.
Gotcha.
So neither side really wanted to do the deal. Nobody liked the deal anymore, but nobody wanted to back out of it. What finally came down after a series of discussions and saber rattling was that the Texas company, Energy Transfer, said, we have to have a particular tax opinion to be able to do this deal. And their tax advisor told them, we can't issue that opinion, which would have created tax liabilities for some of these Energy Transfer shareholders, including the CEO of the company who owns a lot of it. And so they said they pulled the plug on the deal at the last minute after the Williams shareholders had approved it. Now, of course, everything goes to court. There's a case filed in Delaware that has been appealed by Williams, and everybody's, both sides are hoping that they can get the other side to pay off these penalties because the merger's off now. The upshot is, though, this is great news for Oklahoma, it's great news for Tulsa, because one of the things that happened after this deal was struck was initially Energy Transfer said, well, yeah, we're going to keep significant operations in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, and that's still going to be there. Later on, they came back and they said, nope, we're going to pull the plug on all that stuff. We're going to move everything to Dallas, which is 900 employees in Tulsa, and one of their big corporate giants there that's involved in philanthropy and all kinds of corporate good citizenship, in addition to all these high-paying jobs, and hundreds of jobs in Oklahoma City as well. So those jobs are going to stay. So, the mayor of Tulsa and the Chamber of Commerce, they were all celebrating yesterday when this thing fell apart. But it's by no means over, because this litigation will continue. But Williams stays in Tulsa, that's the big headline. And we had half the board of Williams resigned yesterday after trying to oust the CEO and failing. But that's boardroom politics. The big headline is the jobs stay, the company stays.
Wow. Okay. Great story, Don. Down at the river, things starting to spin in the Wheeler District. We're getting the Ferris wheel on the river. Is supposed to start operating this weekend, and that's sort of emblematic of that district that people hope to see in the future. Tell us a little bit about the Wheeler District and what's going on down there.
Sure. Grant Humphreys has bought his family bought the old downtown air park, and he is developing that into what looks to be a fairly impressive thing. There's going to be housing there. There's going to be, it's a whole neighborhood. He's going to have all kinds of levels of housing. They're hoping to have retail, all kinds of amenities. But the first thing he did was, several years ago, he went on eBay and he bought the Ferris wheel that used to sit on the Santa Monica Pier, had it shipped here. It sat in storage for several years, but now it's up. And last night they had a private event where they invited a lot of their friends and our Steve Lackmeyer, and we had a photographer and a videographer there. Got to see the Ferris wheel, got to ride the Ferris wheel. We'll have a big presentation in Saturday's paper and on News OK. There's lots of cool photos. It's really amazing at night. It's all lit up, and people were having a great time down there. And come Monday, the 4th of July, I believe is the day that it's going to be open to the public. Now, one of the things we're going to point out to people is it's going to be hot, and there may be a lot of people that want to ride this Ferris wheel because the view apparently is fairly spectacular over the river and into downtown. You have a nice view. So we're warning people, you know, if you do go, expect to wait and expect some heat, but it's going to be there for a long time, and it's really a neat attraction.
Yeah, I've been watching them build it when I ride my bike down on the riverfront. I've been watching them build it probably for a month or so, and yeah, it's going to be really fun. I'm glad to see that happening down there. Anything that brings more life down there, I think, is a great thing. So, hey, these are the kind of stories you can only get in the Oklahoman. Hope you'll subscribe. Hope you'll keep coming back to newsok.com to see these kinds of stories and more. We've got a lot of great stuff. Don, what do you got coming in the business section this weekend? Well,
we have a story about some people in northern Oklahoma and Pawnee County who have been dealing with lots of earthquakes. You know, that's calmed down around the metro area, but it continues to rumble up north. There's a lot of disposal wells. There's still a lot of shaking, and there's people dealing with that and worrying about what the cumulative effect of all that's going to be. And it's a small town, it's a small county, and they have limited resources, and they have some concerns. So we went and talked to them, and so that should be interesting.
Ben, got anything good coming?
Yeah, you know, when we talk about the education candidates running this year, a lot of focus has been on what this could mean for education funding or teacher pay. You know, if this a wave of education candidates are elected, then maybe they are vote in unison to increase funding. But one thing that also will be in play is school choice issues. What we saw actually last month is the Oklahoma Federation for Children, which has a national office in D.C., pumped almost $100,000 into the elections against these teacher candidates. And this Federation for Children organization is a pro-school voucher organization. School vouchers were on the table this legislative session, didn't really go anywhere. There's kind of support, but it's still somewhat of a controversial issue. Well, if we see a wave of teachers elected this year, it may make education vouchers, school vouchers harder to sell. But if they're unsuccessful, it may give the legislature more cover next year to push forward these vouchers, which would allow parents to take some of their state-appropriated money for schools and put it towards other education options, such as private and homeschooling. So look for that in Sunday's Oklahoman to kind of take a look at what the election might mean for that issue.
Catherine, I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm going to be working on my tan this weekend. That's what I'm going to work on. So anyway, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. Talk to you soon.